Mr. Venkatraman is the Vice President Marketing of the Paperboards and Specialty Papers Division of ITC. He is a management graduate from SIBM Pune. He has been at the forefront of delivering value to the print and packaging industry for the last 25 years. Venky, as he is commonly known to both his colleagues and customers, has been one of the main drivers of PSPD's sustainability initiatives. Today he is going to sprinkle on us his gyan of sustainability and what it means for paper and print. Our second speaker or panelist for today is Professor Dr. Rajendra Kumar Anayat. Dr. Saab, as we all know, is the head of Heidelberg's Print Media Academy in Chennai and is a great human being, genuine to the core, and who really wants to improve the Indian print industry. He has established himself as a dedicated academician with result-oriented research in the global graphic arts industry. He has conducted many technical presentations, workshops, seminars, and trainings around the globe, regularly contributing articles and research papers to many of the world's leading graphic art publications. This is a man for whom printing is a passion. Our third panelist for today is Narendra Paruchuri, or just Narendra as we fondly call him. He is a chemical engineer from the Manipal Institute. In 1978, he joined Pragati and was instrumental in upgrading the company with the latest technologies. He started off as a small printer with just one treadle. Pragati has bagged the Best Printer of the World award thrice in 2006, 2008, and 2010. A big round of applause for him. As we all aspire to be Pragati, Pragati sets the standards and the rest of us try to follow. A large role in his quest of quality is helmed by Narendra. This is a huge man with an equally huge heart, and he's going to share his words of wisdom with us. I'm not going to tell you the topic because I've already given him the questions in advance. He's going to talk extempore and answer those questions. The fourth person and the fourth panelist for today is our very own PNP. Pranav Bhai is the chairman and managing director of Technova. Pranav Bhai's association with the industry is nearly 5 decades, first as a printer in Printwell and later as a provider of imaging solutions, Technova. Thank you for that phone call. Good ringtone. I'm sure there are better ones. I request you all to put it on silent. Technova, under his leadership, has introduced many cutting-edge technologies which has helped transform the imaging processes in this Indian printing and allied industries. Technova's current focus is on inspiring and assisting the printing industry to go green. This great and yet humble man has 3 rules. Be better than your competition and get business on merits. Do not breach the law consciously through oversight or neglect, and be willing to pay penalties when you inadvertently do so. And the third one is no one non-performs intentionally. A leader's job is to nurture the strengths in everyone. So now the introductions are done. Now I shall call upon Venky, who's going to give us his presentation on sustainability and what it means for paper and print. May I please call upon Venky?
And good evening to everyone in the auditorium. Sustainability, standardization for paper and print is a topic which Fahim has given us for this evening, and I'll take you through it and share whatever we in PSPD know from what we do in terms of sustainability as part of ITC, and what we do with many of the printers who are present here, some of whom I know personally and with whom I've been interacting. All of us are aware of global warming, climate change, carbon emissions. So how do they impact us? So this slide actually introduces 2 concepts to you as to what the human imprint is on the global ecology. Biocapacity. Biocapacity is what a certain area or a certain country actually can do with the available resources it has in terms of generation, production, manufacture, and then disposing of the waste. Okay, so that's the footprint of biocapacity. And then there is an ecological footprint, which is how actually the country, through its productive resources, is using this biocapacity. So what this slide actually tells you is that there are debtor and creditor nations, and they are what are signaled on the map. So once you see in deep red or that color are the debtor nations, and the rest are the creditor nations. And most of the industrialized world is a debtor nation. And it also it can be defined in terms of global hectare availability. So there's a productive land area of some billion hectares which are available, and then there are 6.7 billion people in the earth. So 1.6 global hectares is what is available per individual, which is the right sustainable mode, if I might say so. And today, the world on an average is using this, the ecological footprint of the world is 2.2 global hectares. That means we're exceeding it by about 25 or 30%. Of course, in per capita terms, India will be lower, and the West will be higher, and the developed world will be higher. But you know, the people who are higher have to come lower, and the people who are lower can't reach the earlier levels, and things have to come to a mean. So that's what sustainability actually means, that you are actually living beyond your means, you're borrowing from the future, and you will have to come down. And so how do we come down to a level which is acceptable? Okay. I shifted immediately into the topic of what makes paper green. This was one of the questions posed in sustainability. So fiber from a sustainable renewable source, which is virgin or recycled. So I think the key element for paper over other raw materials or packaging materials or print materials would be that it is renewable and it is sustainable. The process of manufacturing also has an impact on the raw material which is being processed. So there are pulping and bleaching technologies, we call them chlorine-free, so elemental chlorine-free or light elemental chlorine-free, which actually give a very sustainable footprint to the paper. There is also a process called totally chlorine-free, which has not got adopted across. So the most popular technology is this elemental chlorine-free and light elemental chlorine-free, and most Indian paper mills are moving towards having such pulping and bleaching facilities. The third thing that you do when you run your manufacturing process is reduce strain on your resources, and that's energy, water, and usage of fiber. All this packaging material finally goes into products, so how you use the product also determines, for example, the GSM of the paper or the paper board that you're using in cursive package. Say if it's a book, it's the GSM of the paper. So that also has an imprint on how you're using the resource. And the final disposal, as to whether it's going to a landfill, whether it's coming back and becoming recyclable and getting reused. So these are important elements in determining what makes it green. So Walmart, for example, has a 7 R's philosophy: reduce, renewable, reuse, recyclable, and another 3-4 more such factors which are there. One question which is always raised is only recycled paper environmentally friendly, or can virgin paper also be environmentally friendly? So all of us know that in campaigns in the media, making paper, you have to cut trees. So cutting trees is regarded as something bad, and therefore, more use of electronic media, which is what today most of your ICT companies actually campaign on. Any campaign today in Indian media on green would immediately stress that you save and stop cutting trees. But growing trees and making paper can also be sustainable. But this has to be governed by certain rules, and it has to be monitored by somebody. So paper is also green if it is from sustainably managed plantations. There are third-party certifications which are available today, which ensure that all the principles involved in conservation are actually followed in such plantations, just like you protect forests. So actually, if you wanted a very sustainable paper, you will encourage more paper use. You will actually incentivize such plantations. The bleaching process, chlorine bleaching is harmful to the environment. It creates lots of byproducts which go into further life cycles of marine organisms or water-bearing organisms. So ECF doesn't use elemental chlorine. So it uses a form of chlorine dioxide that is less harmful on the overall water and water bodies. So that's one way to go. What energy you use? We are big consumers of energy. Typically, an Indian paper mill would have a footprint of 2 to 3 tons of carbon dioxide per ton of paper that they produce. And most of it would be fossil fuel-based coal. So it could be 2 and upwards, 2 to 4, depending on what your source of energy is. So renewable energy, if you use more, and renewable here would mean that if you had your own plantations, you could use some of the twigs and toppings and the bark which is there and burn it in your boilers. So you use more renewable energy, then you're actually becoming more sustainable. Okay, for that you should have access to plantations, which we in India don't have. What we do is actually we grow clones and saplings and then distribute it to farmers and then buy it back from them. But you don't have access to all the litterings and the toppings which are there on the plantation or the forest floor for you to burn in terms of energy. Of course, there are other harmful emissions, which are halides and nitrous oxides, then the chemical oxidation demand and the biological oxidation demand, which all determine how you should work. India today, across all its states, has firm pollution control measures. All this actually get related to the bleaching technology that we use here. So you can see some of the achievements that we have here. So we have created a standing reserve of trees, 1.3 trees planted in ITC for every tree that we actually cut today. And that's a ratio that we would like to maintain. So it's a kind of holistic view of how you should run a business or should run an industry or what kind of regulation should be in place so that you are able to make best use a resource which is very sustainable. Recycle paper. Use anything recyclable definitely helps in the life cycle process. Okay, the USA, for example, I think has a draft printing bill which encourages use up to 25% of recycled fiber in its paper. I don't know whether it's become law yet in the US, but they have such a draft printing bill. And printers who use that, there are 7 or 8 criteria, will actually get some tax credit from the government or an income tax rebate from the government. But there are limits to recycling. You can recycling 4 to 5 times or 4 to 7 times. Otherwise, you have to add virgin fiber. In certain applications where you need a lot of strength, as in packaging, you may not be able to do the recycled fiber alone. In applications where you need a lot of hygiene, as in food contact or pharma, you may not be able to use recycled fiber. But using recycling fiber does make sense. So what makes the entire system green, print and conversion? So one, you have to use paper which is approved or certified, and today there are third-party sources, which I'll come to. Next is for each one in the manufacturing process, we who make paper or paperboard, the printer who actually converts it through his various stages of printing and converting, has to measure the impact of each stage of his process and has to have measures and goals as to how he is going to reduce the impact of this. Okay, this has not yet become a kind of law or statute, but there are standards available, and to those of us who are interested in the future of our own business, would probably like to adopt such measures and then proceed in this manner. Account for emissions, both on freight, and then drive this by evolving a policy that is designed both top-down and from bottom to up. This is what I was referring to, a certain extract from the green printing bills. Apart from saying that 25% recycled fiber, printers who use paper or printing jobs that use paper regularly, 25% recycled fiber, it says the printer cannot use inks which contain heavy metals, plastic, polystyrenes, or polyesters. Not more than 2% VOC from the coating laminates and adhesives which are used. And the reason for this is some of the coating laminates and synthetic adhesives which you use have a higher global warming impact than the ordinary paper or something that you use. So a print project is 96 pages or less. They prefer saddle stitching rather than perfect bound, and that comes back to the adhesive which I say. Because they're going to use a hot melt, and a hot melt is probably less biodegradable or less degradable or less recyclable than saddle stitching as a format. Renewable energy. So a lot of printers today are moving towards buying, say, wind farm credit. So you can set up your own, or in a consortium, a wind farm, and you are allowed offset of that energy which wind farm generates by your local state electric authority or power supply authority. What is sustainable or green? I mean, is it only for people like us to say what it is and impose our standards on you? Or is there some clearly defined public standards which are available and which are auditable and which everyone can follow? So there are such public standards available. As far as fiber goes and the sustainability of fiber for paperboard making, the most popular standard would be FSC, which is the Forestry Stewardship Council. There are other standards like PEFC. India is, as usual, in the throes of making its own standards today for renewable fiber. The Indian Forest Department was set up in 1840s or 1850s under the British, so we believe we have been practicing better conservation than the rest of the world since then in our forests, although the forest areas may have dwindled in between. But we don't have such standards which apply to commercial plantations, which is what we today depend upon. Most paper mills in India do not depend upon forests for their resources. That used to be in the 70s and 80s. The government today just cannot meet the requirements of the growth of the country. 8% GDP would easily translate into 12% growth of print or packaging, 1.5 times. So you cannot meet the demands from our state forest resources. So plantations are the only means. We don't have very clearly defined standards there. So we have to adopt standards which are readily available. Maybe acclimatize it to some of our peculiar requirements here because our legal statutes are different. We don't have large plantations. It's mostly farmers who do own plantations. So it has to be suited to the particular social system and the commercial system that we have here in terms of plantations. These are some of the commonly used standards. I mean, most of them have evolved in different countries. So FSC, registered and born in Germany, is the most recognizable standard today. I think 8 to 10% of the world's both commercial forests and plantation forests are today covered under FSC. Carbon trust is more to do with carbon emissions. It's more in the UK. PEFC is a competing standard of European origin. You have our own earthen pot there, which is the Indian Ecolink sign. It is across categories. It's not only for paper, print, or packaging. It actually across various products. Germany has the Blue Angel. The US, for example, follows what is called the SFI, which you see there, which is the Sustainable Forestry Initiative, which is well adopted. So these are the standards which paper companies and who are in the manufacturing stream can get their process or their raw material procurement audited to. So today we offer, for example, paper under the FSC. So with certification, in terms of the number of people and the impartiality of standard, I think FSC seems to be one of the standards which most people are gravitating to. So in all these cases, the standard which first gets adopted and which is first recognized as gets accepted very quickly would be the standard which slowly gains in favor. So there are minor differences between these standards. So PEFC is a close second. There are companies, paper companies in the world which are certified to both FSC and PEFC. This is another initiative which marries paper to print. So if you are a paper buyer or a board buyer, you have WWF, which is an NGO now, which has launched its own Check Your Paper scorecard. Okay, it's available on the website, and you will find many products registered. I'm happy to share with you the two of our products, both of which are made from recycled fiber, are certified here. So the recycled greyback board, which we make from the Kowai unit for packaging, and the recycled whiteback board have, I think, between 78 and 85 points, and they are there. So there are various grades of paper, both uncoated, coated, labeled papers, and also packaging boards, which are listed in this Check Your Paper tool, which has been evolved by WWF. So what does it measure? It measures your forest performance, which is for virgin fiber. It measures your reclaimed fiber content, so that you get special weightage if there is reclaimed fiber in the paper or board that you make. It measures your climate performance, which is basically to do with the emissions which you release to air, water, or the earth, and against a standard. And of course, the water performance. How much water do you use? Print industry. When we do a search, I think printing still doesn't have any one common standard which defines what is more sustainable print or otherwise. With what 60 to 70% of most printing value chain, depending on paper, I think most of it would depend on the paper or the paper board or the film that you use for printing. There is an International Confederation for Printing and Allied Industries, which is trying to derive standards which can be accepted across. They at least arrived at a set of recommendations on CO2 emissions for different print processes. This is a snapshot from that report. You would find the substrate still contributes to around 60% of the CO2 emission. Inks and varnishes less than 10, around 5%. Energy which you use from the grid is around 15 to 17%. On-site fuels which you may use if you have a boiler which you need to run a chilling unit or something like that would be another 8 to 10%. And the freight of raw material, the inputs, are the rest. So still paper and board would be the main component. And this is for a book printing unit. So if you're a printer making books, still 60% would be from the paper and board. Another close to 10% would be from the freight of the raw material. And the rest are something pertaining to the printing house or the printing process itself. This is another tool which would be very useful when sustainability and sustainability standards go across. LCA stands for Life Cycle Assessment. It's a technique for assessing the environmental aspects and potential impacts associated with the product or service. So it goes stage-wise. You do an inventory of input outputs, fix the boundary lines, and then decide what happens. So you could have different packaging structures, you could have different print raw material structures which go into the packaging of a product. You can do it for a product itself apart from the packaging or the printing of it. So LCA is a tool which will slowly gain as most of the countries in the world move towards defining standards of sustainability. So what are the impacts that it accesses? That's given at the bottom. So that's carbon footprinting, which is basically emissions, water consumption, acidification, the smog creation aspect, which is photochemical oxidant creation, ozone layer depletion, eutrophication, ecotoxicity, and human toxicity. I mean, the number of impacts can be very many more and can be quite frightening. But I think carbon, water, and say energy use would be the main factors which would need to get addressed by the LCA. There are standards available, ISO, as in 1440 and 1444. There's also a UK standard, which is publicly available standard, PAS 2050, which was developed in the UK. So all of them give certain norms which you can take and apply. So some tools are available, but it's a growing practice. It is still not fully defined, it's a growing practice. We are today trying to do for one or two of our products, customers whom we are engaged with, an LCA study to see what are the impacts at the various stage. Once you have some information available, then the paper producer, the print company, and the ultimate publisher or the brand owner can sit together and then decide and harmonize what they are going to do at each stage so that you come out with something better. So that's the importance of this tool. How do you go about an LCA? As you can see here, from the bottom, there are life cycle phases. Then there is a life cycle steps and inventory which you do, and then a final impact assessment. So we have raw material, which is wood and chemicals. You have raw material, which is paper and other synthetic adhesives and varnishes and lacquers that you use. So you define the various elements of your stage process. You assess the input-output ratios and the impacts that will come finally, and then you do a final impact assessment. With impact assessment is done in terms of those areas which you already identified, which is global warming, ozone depletion, carbon emission, and the like. So this is how an LCA goes. Now, one more question which gets often asked is all this green and sustainability, is it real or is it greenwashing? So there is a term called greenwashing, which is about companies trying to pass on maybe incomplete, impartial information and say that they're doing something green. So are the standards, what are Indian paper industry and printers doing together? Are our customers actually interested in all this? So that's the big question that gets asked when you talk sustainability. Or it's just a new gimmick of the paper guys, the board guys, or the printers who go around claiming there's something about sustainability. But all of us in business recognize that whatever business that we do has an imprint, and we have been living beyond our means, and something has to be done. Since there are not enough standards or regulations available, I think it'll have to come more by participation and by the type of companies which have framed the standard. For example, in ITC, I think 5-6 years back, we decided to publish, apart from our annual report and balance sheet, a sustainability report. And the sustainability report is as per standards evolved by the Global Resources Initiative in Netherlands. So it's a third-party standard by which we follow. So apart from compiling our financial results, we now also measure both our use of the resources and our impact on the environment, and also how much we contribute socially across the businesses that we are. So this is a sustainability report, which is available on the itcportal.com website, which all of you can see. More businesses will move that way. Especially the big corporations have to move that way. It's about the smaller businesses, whether they have sufficient incentive or interest to move this way. But if you are dealing with a big packaged goods company or with a big publisher, it's more than likely that you would sooner or later be under pressure to actually measure your business footprint and start reporting them. And then it would be in your interest to see how you can actually lower some of the impacts. This is a study done by MIT Sloan Management Review and the BCG group as to what's happening on sustainability as a theme. So they came up with the view that there are two sets of people. There are people who are early embracers who do something, and then there are people who are cautious adopters. So they said the early embracers practice this, move early, even if information is incomplete, have some programs already towards sustainability, balance broad long-term vision with project offering concrete near-term wins. Some easy wins actually drive you more in sustainability. Drive sustainability both ways, top-down and bottoms-up. Start measuring, which is what I talked about just now, and value intangible benefits seriously. So if you value only the monetary aspect of your business, you're not going to pay attention to all these. And be transparent, both internally and externally. So this is a small chart which talks about financial services, which industries actually adopt this fast. So you would see that the yes is larger in multiple industries and in the auto industry. The auto industry wants to turn green because they have a problem of where all the old autos and the plastic parts will finally end. So we are carbon positive as a company, water positive, and solid waste recycling positive. This is something which most printers here also can do. FSC chain of custody certification, we are moving towards FSC plantation and forestry management certification. Recycling waste. There is no institutional framework in India, unlike in Germany or other places where there is government legislation, packaging legislation, and you collect waste. We have a well thought of waste program. We have now started it in areas around our mills, which is Hyderabad, Bhadrachalam, and Coimbatore. This will slowly spread across. We are joined with the Ramki group so that we can collect fiber waste from all across and move together. Standardization of print industry. There are no benchmarks available. We have worked with the CII. There are a few people here who have already volunteered, and we have measured some of the impacts which I talked about on the energy water usage which has been there, the printers among you. CII will shortly roll out a program based on the study that we have done, which will be offered as a service to printers. We as a company, paper making requires so much energy, so much resources, so we measure our water energy and other impacts very closely, usages, efficiencies, as well as impact. Most printers, medium or otherwise, probably have not given enough thought to it. But we have done some studies, both in Bombay, Hyderabad, and in a few other places, and out of that, CII will evolve a program, which I think the CII SME business will be able to offer as a service to printers. With that, I close. So let us choose responsibly, for we hold the earth in trusteeship for future generations. Thank you.